Good evening and welcome to ITV News. This is Monday night's calendar.
Good evening, here are tonight's main stories.
Crushing fine. Barnsley Council prosecutes its first £1,000 penalty for fly tipping. This is what happened to the offender's truck.
Our message, loud and clear, to anybody who'd consider fly tipping our communities is this: we will find you, we will crush your vehicles, we will prosecute you, we will fine you. There is no place for fly tipping in Barnsley.
Hare Hill's trouble. A man has admitted setting fire to a double-decker bus during a night of violence in Leeds last month.
Remembering a sister. The family fighting for answers after a tragic death during cosmetic surgery in Turkey, and an awful discovery when her body was flown home.
And taking aim, the archer hoping for bullseye at the Paralympic Games. Thank you for joining us. First tonight, how one South Yorkshire council has stepped up its efforts to curb the scourge of fly tipping by issuing its highest fine yet, £1,000.
Fly tipping is considered one of the most antisocial crimes, costing authorities across the country more than £100 million to clear up every year. Now today, Barnsley Council took the unusual step of allowing cameras to witness a fly tipper's vehicle getting crushed as a stark message to those who dump their waste illegally. Fraser Maud reports.
Unsightly, unclean, unhealthy and unwanted. Fly tipping is one of the most visible and frustrating forms of antisocial behaviour. This fly tipper in Wanwell was caught, prosecuted, fined and given 100 hours community service. But the problem still remains. In Goldthorpe today, council workers were once again cleaning up the mess. As well as responding to calls from the public, community wardens also patrol the streets in a bid to bring the fly tippers to justice.
It's distressing when you're driving to work and you see fly tip waste to the side of the street, causing a blight in the communities. It affects everybody, and it's down to a massively selfish minority who can't be bothered to dispose of waste correctly. So it's actually a pleasure to come to work and prosecute these people to keep Barnsley the beautiful borough it should be, and it is.
It's no surprise the people who live here are appalled by the mess.
It's disgusting, absolutely disgusting. But having said that, when you've got rubbish and you've no car, what do?
It's one of my pet hates. I don't like any rubbish anywhere. There's no need for it.
There's a dumping Goldthorpe, there's no need to do it. You know, at the end of the day, you don't have to fly tip it.
Just an inconvenience. Yeah, it don't look good. It's messy.
This is the end result of an investigation which led to the first £1,000 fine being issued by the council. It wasn't paid, so the vehicle used to dump the rubbish has been destroyed. The council hope that this will be a stark warning to anyone planning on fly tipping, a strong message that they will be caught and they will be prosecuted. Every incident of fly tipping costs the taxpayer an average of £76 to clean up. Now the council's environmental care and litter plan means stronger penalties for the offenders.
It's absolutely not acceptable, and every effort, every measure that we can take to bring those responsible to bear, to make sure they face the full weight of the law, we will absolutely do as a council.
The message is clear: dispose of your waste responsibly or risk the consequences. Fraser Maud, ITV News, Goldthorpe.
A woman has been arrested on suspicion of murder nearly a decade after a pensioner was attacked in his home. 80-year-old Tommy Ward was found with life-threatening injuries after an incident at his house in Maltby in October 2015. Sadly, he died 5 months later as a result of the injuries that he'd suffered. Now, 10 men and 1 woman were arrested at the time on suspicion of a number of offences and were released without charge. A 36-year-old woman from Rotherham has been arrested on suspicion of his murder.
More offenders who took part in violent unrest in Rotherham and across our region have been jailed today as the government has brought in emergency measures to cope with the pressure on already overcrowded prisons.
Now, 2 men are behind bars tonight after appearing at Sheffield Crown Court. More are expected to face justice in the coming days. Meanwhile, a man has admitted that he set fire to a double-decker bus in a Leeds suburb in violent scenes in July. Well, Katie Oscroft joins us in the studio. Katie, yet another busy day in court. Can the prisons really cope with all of this?
Well, first of all, Lara, we've seen a steady stream of people facing justice, haven't we, since those scenes which unfolded in places like Rotherham 2 weekends ago when a hotel housing asylum seekers was surrounded and the police were attacked. Well, today the Recorder of Sheffield, Judge Jeremy Richardson KC, jailed another 2 men for their part in the rioting. Nivan Matthew was sentenced to 2 years and 8 months. He's 19 years old and had no previous convictions until today. Now, Judge Richardson said he was part of an ignorant mob, which also included 29-year-old Nathan Palmer. Also on the front line of that group, the court was told he grabbed a police shield from an officer who'd fallen during the melee. He was also sentenced to 2 years and 8 months. The judge said his conduct was spreading hate. Well, to go back to your question, can prisons cope? Well, because of the sheer numbers of people we're seeing fast-tracked through the courts that the government has introduced Operation Early Dawn. It's aimed at easing the pressure on prison officers who've welcomed it.
Last week alone, throughout the estate, we had 397 new prison receptions. That's a really high number. It hasn't been that high for several years. And the knock-on effect of that was swift justice for the rioters. So the likes of Leeds and Hull, who were already overcrowded prisons, would have been even more overcrowded. And that's why we've now initiated Operation Early Dawn, so we can triage prisoners who are held in police cells and only escort to court those that we know we've got a prison space for.
Okay, we know that this rioting followed a disturbance, a pretty major disturbance 2 weeks earlier, of course. Are people involved in that in Leeds going through the courts too?
Ian, yes, they are. Now, this was a separate, very worrying incident, completely different cause. It was sparked when some children were being taken into care, but it escalated. And today at Leeds Crown Court, a man pleaded guilty to setting fire to this double-decker bus, an unforgettable image there. Iustin Dobra spoke through a Romanian translator. He'll be back in court next week facing another charge which also relates to that disturbance. He may well be sentenced then. Now, he spoke via a video link from HMP Leeds, which is amongst the prisons being helped to cope with increasing overcrowding and going back to that situation. We've seen figures that show that last month in Leeds there were 400 inmates over the best capacity. In other words, it was already overcrowded before the riots and before that disturbance in Hare Hills.
Yes, quite a serious situation in our prisons. Thanks very much indeed, Katie.
Next to a shocking story, part of an ITV News exclusive series about the potential dark side of cosmetic surgery.
More than 150,000 people leave these shores every year for cut-price procedures in Turkey.
One of those was Cadel Brown from Sheffield, who made the trip to Istanbul with her sister in March.
Well, Cadel hoped the surgery for what's known as a mummy MOT would help rebuild her confidence. However, it's ended up taking her life. And the family is still in the dark about how exactly she died.
Well, in a moment, we'll be hearing from ITV News correspondent Rachel Townsend, who's been part of the investigation. But first, let's hear from Cadel's sister.
I got a knock on door and 3 people walked in and just said, "Can you come with us, please?" They just started trying to say, you know, there's complications of surgery. And I just said, "As my sister died." And he just said, "I'm sorry, but yeah." They just passed me an envelope, said, "This is your money back and this is your sister's money back."
Well, earlier I spoke to Rachel and asked her first about the extent of the family's ordeal.
Yeah, this is such a shocking story, and we've been working with the family since Cadel's death, and they are heartbroken and they are still searching for answers. Now, the procedure that was suggested to them by clinic experts in Istanbul was something called a mummy MOT. Now, that consists of a tummy tuck, liposuction and a Brazilian butt lift. And it is simply not possible to get those three procedures done together here in the UK, as it is deemed too dangerous. But Cadell and her sister Leanne went to Istanbul for that surgery in March. As we know, Cadell never came out. We know that she died at some point in the operating theatre, but her sister and the rest of the family are still searching for answers as to exactly how.
So Cadell's body was returned to the UK, but once here, authorities, they made a really grim discovery, didn't they? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's right. Once a UK coroner was granted access to Cadell's body, she had to tell them the devastating news that parts of her brain, heart and lungs had been removed. And you can only imagine how difficult that is to hear. And as her sister told us, they have no idea as to why this happened.
When they returned her body, they'd kept pieces of her heart and her intestines.
How hard was that to hear?
Better. I don't think it was allowed, but they said it's legal, they can take what they want. I thought you'd have to ask at least permission from family before you took anything, but...
They sent a death certificate straight away and just put no, there's not even a cause of death.
So what has the clinic had to say about these missing parts and these organs?
Well, Laura, we have obviously put all of this to clinic experts in Istanbul. They have told us they found no evidence of malpractice and insisted that when they handed the body over to the Turkish authorities, it was untouched. Now, neither the family or ITV News has been able to get hold of anybody in the coroner's office. We plan to travel to Turkey ourselves to confront them face to face, but our visa applications were rejected. And the fact is that Turkey don't really want any negative stories about health tourism. It brings in over £3 billion a year. And clinics even offer tax breaks to some clinics who treat foreign patients. So that is what we're up against. Now, the doctor who carried out the surgery has responded to us. She refused an on-camera interview, but she told us that her death was likely caused by fat blocking a blood vessel, which can occur during this type of surgery. Now, a tiny glimmer of hope for Cadell's family is that this case has now been taken over by a Sheffield coroner. We went with them to court on Friday and she has promised them answers. But of course, it is a lengthy process. She will gather evidence. She has told them that she hopes for her inquest to conclude by February next year. They will then be approaching the 1-year anniversary of Cadell's death. And as the wait goes on, you know, their grief is just compounded.
Of course it is. Rachel Townsend, thank you very much. Truly shocking story, and there'll be more on that story on the ITV National News and on our website.
But still to come on calendar, taking aim, we speak to the archers hoping for a medal in the Paris Paralympics.
And the moon looked spectacular last night across the region. A photo to come in the forecast later. It's actually full tonight and it's the first supermoon of 2024. Will we catch a glimpse as skies clear? The forecast is coming up.
But first, a drink driver from Retford has been jailed for killing a cyclist on a rural road in North Nottinghamshire. Jack Bingley was driving along Cottam Lane in Treswell in January on the morning after a night out. While overtaking a group of cyclists, the 26-year-old beeped his horn before hitting Robert Noble from Gainsborough at a junction. The driver, Bingley, fled from the scene. He's been jailed for 9 years.
Well, as we gear up for the bank holiday weekend, mountain rescue teams across our region say it can be one of their busiest periods. Teams are made up entirely of volunteers who are on call 365 days a year.
To help cope with high demand, rescue services are always recruiting and they're keen to get more women involved. They say they want to change perceptions and build more diverse teams. Chris Conway reports.
They are the biggest support to our emergency services, mountain rescue teams. They search for missing walkers, rescue people from tricky terrain, and even help save homeowners from flooded properties. Crewed entirely by volunteers, Becky is keen for more women to join her team based at Hope Valley in the Peak District.
I think it's really important that there's some representation across the types of communities that we go to. Everybody that we go out to rescue is vulnerable in some way, and having someone that you can relate to, I think, is really important in whatever form that might take.
There are 47 volunteer rescue teams across England and Wales. Figures show in some teams women make up just 5% of their total volunteers, while even teams with the highest proportion of female rescue staff, that number still stands at just 30%.
I went on rescues, I went on conferences, and it was always very much male orientated.
Ready?
Rachel has been a volunteer with her rescue team for more than a decade. She says although search and rescue teams have historically had a gender imbalance, it wasn't enough to put her off.
It was seen as a male environment for me. What happened was I was acknowledged and appreciated for bringing what I brought, and sometimes actually what I brought was a different view completely, a different perspective to things, and that was embraced. Thankfully our team is quite progressive.
This group taking part in water rescue training is made up of both men and women from a range of backgrounds. Crucially, for those who've been volunteering in mountain rescue for a long time, they say teams are now more representative of the communities they serve. Penny Brockman is a mountain rescue trailblazer. She was one of the very first volunteers back in 1986. She says teams have changed the way they operate to be more inclusive.
We're living in a different society. I wasn't allowed to wear trousers when I first joined. Teams are becoming more flexible. Some teams are already putting in policies to support maternity leave, childcare. So we are thinking around those situations to become more open for women to join mountain rescue.
Both Penny and Rachel feel there are no barriers now to women joining and are keen to encourage as many female applicants as possible. They say having diverse teams will only benefit those who come to rely on the help of rescue services. Chris Conway, ITV News.
And they will certainly do a great job. Now, the ITV Evening News continues at 6:30. Let's find out what's on the programme tonight from Mary Nightingale.
Coming up on the programme, tragedy at sea. A luxury super yacht sinks off the coast of Sicily. At least one person is dead. On board were British nationals, including the tech tycoon Mike Lynch. Now, your energy bill's about to take an unwelcome turn this winter. Experts predict a jump before the end of the year. And celebrations for the best friends who are so in sync they brought home an historic Olympic medal for Team GB. Would you join me for those stories and more at 6:30? Thank you, Mary. Well, it's time for some sport now, and Sheffield Wednesday came back down to earth with a bang.
Xero Accounting Software sponsors ITV Regional Sports Report.
And it's time to say hello to Arif. And Arif, this time last week, the Owls fans, they had smiles on their faces, but I think it's a different story this week, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, Ian. What a difference a week makes. This time last Monday, they were top of the league thanks to a 4-0 win. Yesterday, they were on the wrong end of a 4-0 scoreline. Wednesday started brightly, but after a whirlwind 15 minutes, they found themselves 3-0 down away to Sunderland. Any chance of a comeback was quickly put to bed 2 minutes into the second half as the Black Cats purred to a 4-0 win.
They are disappointed today. I think they are angry. They are sad. Yeah, all the things emotional, but this is okay today. And then next game, we try it again and we keep going, and we want to show a reaction, and this is what is our job.
We'll hope to see a reaction against Leeds on Friday night, who themselves are yet to confirm the sale of Jorginho Rutter to Premier League side Brighton, who triggered his release clause last week. Now, he wasn't in the squad at the weekend, and Leeds certainly looked like they missed his presence up front. The Whites managed just one shot on target in their goalless draw at West Brom. And with 11 days left in the transfer window, Leeds fans will be desperate to see some new faces in at Ellen Road. Well, Sheffield Wednesday were also held to a draw at Bramall Lane. It looked to be a routine win for the Blades as they raced into a two-goal lead against QPR, but the visitors fought back in the second half, and despite having a man sent off, they scored a late equaliser and the points were shared. Well, in League One, life under Michael Duff at Huddersfield Town is off to a great start. The Terriers' win over Stevenage means Duff is the first permanent town manager to win his first 2 league games in charge since 1987. Now, one of his former clubs, Barnsley, bounced back from an opening day defeat to pick up their first win of the season. They beat Lincoln 2-1 at Central Bank. That was a 97th minute winner from Lee Gregory that rescued a point from Mansfield, and a fantastic double save denied Rotherham their first win of the season. Their game with Bristol Rovers finished 0-0. Sam Follerin rescued a point for Harrogate in the 93rd minute, and Bradford were held to a goalless draw by Salford, and Doncaster suffered their first defeat of the season, losing 3-1 at Newport. And that's all your sport from me this evening.
Well, thank you very much. It was a busy sports section, wasn't it?
Indeed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, let's stay with sport now, and it's just 9 days until the Paralympics, and over the next few weeks and days we're going to be looking at some of the sports to be included in the Games.
One of those is archery, which broke records when it featured in the first ever Paralympics in Rome. And over 64 years later, the sport is still challenging misconceptions and paving the way for more disabled people in our region to take part in competitive sport. Catherine Walker has this report.
It's the ultimate test of accuracy and concentration. Para-archery is rooted in the history of the Paralympics and has been part of every Games since they started in 1960. Today, over 6 decades later, players like former Paralympian Victoria Rummery from Curtin in Lindsay still love the sport.
As the years have gone on, I've gone to more disabled sort of clubs and that, and I find archery is one of the most inclusive sports ever known because there's so many adaptations you can do. I mean, there's people that shoot with their feet, you know, and you'll see them in the Paralympics and that, and it's just amazing.
Heading into this year's Games, Team GB are keen to keep shooting down misconceptions about who can play sport. World champion Phoebe Patterson-Pine won gold in Tokyo and has used her newfound platform to speak openly about the impact it's had on her mental health.
Becoming a Paralympic champion, everybody wants to beat you, and you start questioning yourself and questioning your ability, and I definitely think being more open about it and kind of raising that awareness is something that feels important to me, just because I know what the struggle can be like.
And it's not just Phoebe hoping to break down barriers. Archer Jodie Grinham, who won silver at the last Games, is thought to be the first ever para-athlete to compete whilst pregnant for Team GB.
It's not been easy. There's been a few minor adjustments. The weight shift, obviously, because you get bigger and bigger, so my gravity has definitely changed. So we've had to adjust the weight on my bow. But Paralympics GB, Archery GB have just been incredible. They've made sure everything is done, everything is safe, even down to the little details of Paris, of knowing where the maternity units are around the village.
With just over a week until the opening ceremony, the team is training hard with the help of head coach Andrea. But as well as targeting medals, she's focused on developing the future of the sport.
I would say in the last cycle especially, we've seen para-archery reach new levels where some of our paras actually go into able-bodied teams, and I think it's just going to keep growing, and the world is catching us up, but we want to keep pushing forwards.
All the competitors, drawn from 20 countries, are paralysed.
Archery has been a pioneer of inclusive sport for over 60 years. And this team hope to build on that legacy as they prepare to set their own records on the world stage. Catherine Walker, ITV News.
Hope they all do really well. You know, archery's really hard.
Have you had a go? Well, that scares me.
I haven't been practising either. I had a go when I was on holiday, and the upper body strength that you need.
Perhaps I could stand in front of a target with an apple on my head and see how good your aim is. What do you
I'm
think?
not sure that's a good idea. What if I miss?
I don't think it's a good idea either. Right, let's get the weather forecast now. Here's Joe Blythe.
Good visibility on the horizon. TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
Hello, very good evening to you. An unsettled, changeable few days to come weather-wise. It's actually starting to feel a little bit autumnal out there. Temperatures will get to around average for the time of year, but it's unsettled and showery and quite windy at times, so perhaps feeling a little fresher than we'd like. Very active, that jet stream for the time being. It's pushing frontal systems across the Atlantic towards the UK, and we are going to bear the brunt of those through this week in the form of spells of showery rain, breezy conditions at times, and temperatures aren't doing too badly by night, but by day perhaps feeling a little fresher than we'd like. For a time this evening, rain will be moving eastwards. 1 or 2 heavy bursts, the early hours of tomorrow morning showing some signs of clearance, but it remains breezy with a few breaks in the cloud before dawn, and generally dry conditions for most places across Yorkshire to wake up to tomorrow. Not a chilly night, 15, maybe 16 Celsius, the overnight low, and a bright start to the day tomorrow. On to tomorrow, the sun will be up at 5:55, setting at 8:23. For many of us, we'll see showers developing quite quickly tomorrow morning on that southwesterly breeze, but there's plenty of bright, sunny weather around as well. And during the course of the afternoon, isolated showers will crop up, but dry, fine for many of us, perhaps feeling a little fresher in that breeze. Temperatures to around 19, 20 Celsius in sheltered spots tomorrow afternoon. Looking ahead to the next few days, and showers will never be too far away. Low pressure tends to dominate our weather through the rest of this week. Daytime values will be around average for the time of year. At least by night, not too chilly, but showers continue into this weekend. Bye-bye.
TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
Did she say that word autumnal?
I think she did.
She did, didn't she?
I'm trying not to think about it.
It's only August.
I know. Where's summer? Where is it?
No, it's still here.
Kerry promised us sunshine over the weekend. Where was it?
I had some of it. Thank you very much for watching. We will see you again tomorrow.
Yeah, a very good night. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.